Three, two, one, go.
Welcome into PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. And with me, if it's Thursday, it's got to be Eric Garfield from Florida Prospects Report and PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. We're going to get into these trades that the Orioles made, and we're going to talk about, obviously, we'll get into a little bit about what the Orioles got. But by now, you've probably all heard that. We want to sort of hash over what we gave up and see if the juice was worth the squeeze. And we're also going to talk about, and Eric pointed it out to me, and I asked Mike Elias yesterday about the under the radar trade that really wasn't really well reported, and nor did they make a big deal out of it because it was under the radar. We're going to talk about the trade of outfielder Billy Cook, a reasonable prospect with the Orioles, for Patrick Riley, a pitcher. We'll talk about that. But let me get a couple bits of business out of the way. And we'll remind you that the Costas Inn commercial will be heard midway through the show. We are brought to you by Atman's Deli, the new Atman's Deli in Baltimore's Harbor Point. If you are looking for corned beef piled high, hand-rolled bagels, and something different, a bar, then Atman's has food and drink specials every day. If you're in the neighborhood right now, if you live in Fells Point or Harbor Point, it's just a stone's throw from Fells Point. You can walk over there. It's really a really neat place. I know the air conditioning will be on, and at the bar, you can watch the O's game and eat dinner, grab a couple drinks, and hang out. You can pick up a copy of PressBox. They're now open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Dine in, grab takeout, or hang out at the bar for the next O's game. And that game tonight, Eric, starts at, is it 6:30?
6:30, yeah.
6:30 in Cleveland. Atman's Deli, an authentic taste of Baltimore tradition since 1915. Find them at Harbor Point or visit atmansdeli.com. We're also brought to you by A.J. Michaels, expert and award-winning A.J. Michaels Heating, AC, Plumbing, and Home Performance will improve your home's energy efficiency, kill all viruses in your system, and get you eligible for $6,000 in rebates. The AC season is here. It's on our necks right now. So check them out. New rebates and discounts are available. More at ajmichaels.com. AJ Michaels, heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and home performance, along with Carrier, the big guys in town. Our big guy is Eric Garfield, who knows the Orioles minor league system as well as anybody I know. And there's a very good reason for it, because he really works at it, and he lives right around the corner from Ed Smith Stadium in Sarasota. I welcome Eric Garfield. Eric, how are you?
I'm good. Without getting ready for FCL games every single day, I
You've got a
have
lot of
had
more
a
free
couple days
time,
to
don't you?
relax.
You're more relaxed, aren't you?
I'm feeling a little less stressed. I don't have anything to do before this. I don't have anything to do after this. So my focus is you, how it should be.
How is Scooter taking to seeing you around as much as he is now?
His exercise schedule has increased over the last couple days, and in some ways he's ready for it, but in some ways he's ready for still relaxing. He's on the floor right now sitting.
He's a pretty hairy German Shepherd, a beautiful dog. How does
Yes.
he like the heat down there in Florida?
He
I
does
know he's
not
from Florida. He was born there, but
he does not like being outside during the middle of the day in July, August, September, but otherwise he's fine. I bought him a swimming pool for our backyard, so if things are that bad, he can just walk into the pool and sit down, and he does that about 2 times a day in August.
All right, that's great. The pool that the Orioles dipped into. Let's talk about some trades and what they
Good
gave
transition.
up. Let's talk about what they gave up. Sir Anthony Dominguez was the first guy that they acquired, right? Was it Sir Anthony for Austin Hayes? We got Christian Pache, who's been DFA'd today.
Correct. So right, it's
so
Hayes
there were no
for Dominguez.
prospects in that, but do you like Sir Anthony Dominguez?
I do. I think of him similar to Cano, maybe a little bit of a poor man's Cano, but someone, if you give them more of a role and slightly more opportunity, he might run
Might
with it.
step into it. Yeah.
He might seize it. So far, it looks like that's a reasonable expectation for like an eighth inning or a seventh inning high leverage guy. I'm really glad that we have him,
Well,
especially because the opportunities were for Hayes were kind of shrinking and dwindling over time. I'm also
yeah,
glad he's doing well in Philadelphia.
yeah. I'm glad he went to a good spot for him. And I'll tell you what, Mike Elias, and I know Mike fairly well. I mean, we're not best buds and we don't hang out, but I
Not
know
yet.
when he's sincere. He doesn't have to bring it up. He said, I just really want to commend Austin Hayes and how important he was
Totally
about
agree.
how the club transitioned from irrelevant to relevance. And he said he was a big part of it. And he was, despite what everybody got kicked off that he stopped hitting after the All-Star game last year and didn't pick it back up this year. But he was an important player for the last 4 or 5 years.
He's a fine player, and you know what? I'm going to be happy to watch him have some playoff moments in a lineup where he's going to be able to thrive. I'm really happy that the Orioles got something for him, and he was
Yep.
able to land on his feet. It's not like he's wallowing in Oakland or the White Sox where he's
Right.
going to win 50 games a year and
Right.
not have any passion. So really good for him and his family that they landed on their feet.
All right. The second trade the Orioles made, we finally got into acquiring someone of real substance, not to take anything away from Sir Anthony, but what we needed is a starting pitcher, an innings eater. Zach Eflin is a
Yeah,
strike thrower. We'll
yeah.
talk about him in a second. The return that Miami got, Connor Norby, Kyle Stowers, it seems like a pretty fair trade given that Eflin has another year of eligibility.
Eflin was the Rays, so that was the
Oh,
return
not
for
eligibility. I'm sorry. Yeah, go
That's
ahead.
all right. It's three prospects: Horvath, Mac Horvath, infield, outfield; Jackson Bomeister, the highest pitcher the Orioles have ever drafted from Florida State, who you and I saw; and then Matthew Etzel, who I think is going to be long term the key piece in the deal. Low strikeout rate, high walk rate, high extra base hit. The guy's got 60 steals out of 70 attempts and less than 400 minor league at bats. Everything about his profile, everything about his athleticism and his game screams Rays player development. He even was inexpensive. He signed for $170,000. They love and need guys like this in their system. He went to their high A, and he's going to blow up and be a huge prospect producer in
So
their system.
so was the what we gave up, was it too much for Zach Eflin or just about right?
Ooh, I'm gonna think it's very, very close to just about right. The determinant for that particular question will be if Jackson Bomeister is just good or if he's a multi-time all-star type good. Then maybe we got a little bit ripped off. But the Orioles are contending. They need innings. They don't need him to be pretty. They don't need him to be spectacular. We're not trading for prime Max Scherzer. So we're gonna have to give up a few prospects. Now, later we'll talk about maybe there's somebody that in our system and in their developmental track kind of just replaced Bomeister,
I
which is
think
a
I think
pleasant
that's the
surprise.
case, and that's the trade you told me about, the Billy Cook for Patrick Riley. We'll get into
Correct.
that. You didn't mention much about Stowers. Did you sour on Stowers?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I'm not going to say yes, but I am going to
But you're not
say
going to say no.
well, a minute ago I mentioned Sir Anthony Dominguez. The more chances you give him, the more he's going to prove that he's worthy of high leverage. Stowers' profile does not say the same things. It doesn't demonstrate the same things. It looks like the more opportunities you give him, the more he's going to strike out. Ironically, 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts in his introduction to his new team, the Marlins. So I don't want it to sound like I'm criticizing his game, but his strikeout rate when he hit AAA in 2020, 22 or 2020, whatever year he was organizational player of the year was 25. 1 out of 4 times up, he struck out. His strikeout rate when he got traded this year was 25, striking out 1 out of 4. And this is triple A. So you go to the majors, you play more, the opponents and the stuff that you're facing is going to be slightly better. I just don't see that as an equation for success, short or long term. And on top of that, what the Marlins are worst at is helping their players
development,
address deficiencies and get better. So he's in a bad spot for where his profile is right now. I just don't know if that transition is going to maximize what he can bring to the table.
Are you going to give him this? I just wonder. I always wonder in sports. I always wanted to see Larry Holmes fight George Foreman when they were both in their prime, and it never happened. I'm always going to wonder why they didn't bring Stowers up this year at the beginning of the year for 10 or 12 days of Tony Kemp. I'm always going to wonder because he had such a great spring. And I don't think you can just say that he hit the 4 of the 5 home runs when I was down there for 2 weeks or 18 or 14 days, that he hit them off of nobodies. I mean, he was hitting them off of good left-handed pitchers. And I'm just always going to just wonder, did they miss giving him that opportunity that he could have turned it into something?
That is something to think about because he had a hot spring. And remember, he was hitting them off lefties too, which was his noted
weakness.
Area of deficiency.
Right.
Maybe we'll find out one day.
You think the Marlins got themselves a decent second baseman or maybe a first baseman eventually in Norby or a left fielder eventually?
Totally.
I got to tell you, his defense looked pretty good in Baltimore.
Right. Yeah. When people watch him play, it's a little bit different than just commenting on social media when you don't watch him play. He used his athleticism to make himself a more than adequate left fielder. I totally feel differently about Norby. This is a team in a situation. He's getting 550 plate appearances the second he comes up, and I think he's going to maximize them. Just kind of like the Marlins fans and fan base fell in love with a grinder, power hitter, second baseman, Dan Uggla. They still talk about this guy. So I think Norby is kind of like a rich man's adjusted for 2024 high contact Dan Uggla.
Maybe without the steroids. Maybe without the steroids.
He's strong, but this is normal course of weightlifting and body change. But with the rules that you have to have an all-star every year, it's reasonable to think that Norby might be the Marlins all-star one of the next 5 seasons. I'm very, very happy to see that.
Question: why did they option him to AAA right
now? You're going to need a different type of expert to answer for the Marlins on this type of show. I have no idea why they're bad at just about everything. So he should be up there today, but he's on the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp instead of the Marlins.
Okay. And by the way, I think I screwed up. I have the trades in front of me. I made it sound like we gave up Stowers and Norby for Eflin. We gave up Baumeister. You said it, but Baumeister, Horvath, and Etzel. Trevor Rogers. What do you know about Trevor Rogers? He's going to pitch tonight against the Cleveland Guardians.
Well, being a major leaguer, I don't know a lot about him, but I did hear what Elias had to say about him and what the Marlins and especially their PR people, their off-field staff, said he was a great guy, the kind of guy that you want in your organization for more than a season. His rate is relatively cheap. His period of team control is relatively long. He's left-handed, and he's major league experienced. So, again, you're going to have to pay with prospects to get a profile like that. And quite frankly, I'm glad the Orioles did. Is he a playoff starter? I don't know. But is he giving the organization handfuls of innings every 4 or 5 days at a period when they need it? That's an absolute yes. So acquiring someone like that is vital to the pennant stretch.
Question, I may have said it to you last week. The Orioles, when they were really a great team, I'm talking about the late 60s, 70s, early 70s, they made trades for Pat Dobson one time, and they also traded for Ross Grimsley, who was not a star, and they traded for Mike Cuellar, who not 10 people in Baltimore knew who he was when they acquired him. Mike Cuellar ended up winning 20 games 4 times, 18 games twice. Part of that is he was a really good pitcher. He was crafty, but a large part of it is he went to a team that not only scored him runs, they had a really good team at preventing runs. The defense and the left field wall, does that help Trevor Rogers' confidence as a pitcher?
I actually think it's going to help Eflin more. This is the year that he's walking. He's walking a little bit less,
More people,
and he's
yeah.
exchanged that for more pull side contact. So he's not getting hit, but he's getting touched more. So he's the pitcher that's going to give up line drives, fly balls towards the wall, and I think that whatever 12 to 15 feet of air distance is going to make a big difference to him. I mean, how many times a week do we watch an Oriole game where there's a shot to left field and our brain says last year that's gone, this year it's not? A fair percentage of the time it's helping the Orioles. So I think Eflin is going to, based on some of his comments that he's made already, he's going to like pitching in Camden Yards a lot more than he ever liked pitching in the Trop. And also, I believe when the Orioles come down here next week, he starts Friday night.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to get in one of those games. Yeah.
I will be there.
All right. Those were the 3 major trades the club made. It then circled back late in the afternoon on Wednesday, or Tuesday, I mean, and they acquired a left-handed relief pitcher, Gregory Soto, who has a real power arm. One of the things they picked up, and Luke Jackson brings it up all the time, that Mike Elias wanted more velocity out of his back-end pitchers. And in Dominguez and Gregory Soto, he's picked up velocity, but they gave up, there was a price to pay. And the price was Seth Johnson, who, I got to be honest, I thought their timing on Seth Johnson was, hey, we know back in 22, we know we're trading for him. He's going to have Tommy John, but we'll hope to have him up near the majors in 24. And that never even came close this year. But is he pitching a little bit better of late?
Actually, he's not. He's pitching slightly worse of late, especially in terms of strikeouts and beating batters. Now we're into the 20 to 26 month range post surgery. So this is
stronger now.
Yeah, he's as strong as he either was before or is going to get in terms of pitching routine. So I'm going to say this is an example of the Orioles looking at him and saying what we thought we were going to get from him, the ceiling we expected him to reach. The indicators are coming in right now that that's not going to happen. I believe that Seth turns 26 his next birthday. So these are the times in I guess upper or older development that you start to make those determinations. And I have not watched him enough to see it, but looking at the stats, this is not someone that strikes out 8.4 batters per 9, and we call that anything near a success. So on the other hand, Philadelphia is doing outstanding things with pitchers, high and low minors. So if there's a place that can take what he's done and make it even better, he is in it right now.
By the way, they gave up in that Carlos Estevez trade, they gave up the pitcher we like, the Italian kid.
Aldegari
Went to the Angels, which will get a real opportunity there.
Yep.
Question about Seth Johnson. Maybe his high side now is doing what they got out of Jeff Huffman, who Jeff Huffman was once a #1 pick, I think, of the Blue Jays.
Yep.
In fact, Peter Angelos, when Dan Duquette wanted to go be the president of the Blue Jays, and they offered him that job and he was under contract, Peter didn't let him go without compensation, and he demanded 2 high-end prospects. One of them was Jeff Huffman, who didn't make it with Toronto, didn't make it with Colorado, but has surfaced as an invaluable relief pitcher like sort of in the seventh to ninth inning roles, not a closer, but late inning leverage.
Yep.
Maybe because they're not exactly dying for starting pitching right now. So
They're
maybe they
not.
feel that's his upside is being a 2 or 3 inning pitcher.
That's logical, but I have a feeling this is going to be a guy that maybe goes an affiliate down from where he was just to get back to
Back
basics,
to
because
basics.
the way that Philadelphia does things
Yeah.
with pitchers is not similar to the way that the Orioles do things with pitchers. So he might, even though he's 25 and that's less than ideal, he
Yeah.
might be getting a bit of a developmental reset, which for his profile and where his stuff has kind of stagnated this year. That's exactly what he needs. I'm going to say the book is not done on Seth Johnson. He's too good of a thrower and too good of an athlete to just
Yeah.
end up a minor league nothing. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't cross the threshold one day and
Okay.
contribute in the bigs.
Interesting. I like Soto. Big thing with him is getting thrown enough strikes. That's to
Yep.
me the big thing with Soto. But
You do
you know,
AL only fantasy. Wasn't he like one of the top closers a couple years ago?
he was with the Tigers, and he was a guy that you would have gotten cheap because he kind of came out of nowhere, and he was good. And then that quickly they traded him. When you go,
Okay.
wait a minute, why are they trading him? I
Right.
don't remember what they got. I think it was that trade they got like Nick Matan and Friedler and somebody else for Gregory Soto.
Good
It was
memory,
one of
Stan.
Scott Harris's trades, I think. Um, then they got the Orioles got well. Actually, let me take my break and do the Costa Sin spot. We've been talking for 20 minutes.
Happens
Um,
sometimes.
we've been doing a thing about the Costa Sin of late, and I asked Eric to hold up his thumbs. On Mondays we have six thumbs. Tonight we've only got 4 thumbs, but we always give the Costas thumbs up on their food. And I wanted to
Indeed.
talk a little bit about the Costas from a different angle. And I'm glad the other night on our show that we did with Ross and Luke on Tuesday night, Nick Triantopoulos was listening, and he said, "I love what you did about what's happened locally to us, because of the bridge." And again, if you go there tonight, tomorrow's Saturday, the place is wall to wall people, but their volume of people throughout the entire week is down a little bit, and it's a trend that they attribute to the collapse of the Bay Bridge, which took a
Obviously.
toll in the whole community for several weeks. We lost 4 or 5 people in it, and it's caused all kinds of inconvenience for all the rest of us driving in traffic that we're not used to on 695. Very different. And part of that is the reason that people from Glen Burnie or Budas, Catonsville, who used to hop on the Key Bridge, they're not going to the Costas Inn because it used to take 20, 25 minutes to get there. It now takes about an hour and 20 to go the whole way around the Beltway.
It's
So
rough.
so what I'm pitching is to the people that live nearby the Costas Essex, Middle River, Sparrows Point, Dundalk. You may think that the Costas is a little too expensive or something like that. Check out the pricing on their nightly specials, Monday through Friday. They also have other menu items that are really incredibly reasonable. Like their pit beef and
Ooh.
pit turkey sandwiches and things like that. Nick was talking to me about that. So if you think that you know what it's going to cost there because crabs are expensive, don't put that on the Costas Inn. So if you live nearby, check it out again for the first time. The Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. And to the crab eaters out there from anywhere that you want to come from, make your party plans by calling 410-477-1975. Find out the prices, sizes, and availability of crabs to make your crab feast for your friends and family or both the super success you want it to be. And you can watch O's games, Ravens games, anything on the tube there, Olympics, the Costas Inn. You'll love it. All right, we're going to wrap up the program with a few minutes talking about these last couple deals that the Orioles made. Um, they picked up Eloy Jimenez, who I'm sure you're familiar with. He was never a huge prospect in the United States because signed out of Cuba, I
Yep.
think at 22 or 23 years of age. He's
Yep.
only 27 years old. And Eric, I remember because he was coming up as like it was his first year or maybe his second year. And I'm watching a game up here in Baltimore before I went down to spring training, or it was late in the spring training, and he jumped up against the
I
fence
remember that. I remember.
I think it was in Clearwater, their
Yeah.
stadium. It might have been Dunedin, but he got his arm hooked and he ripped his pectoral muscle
Right.
and he missed, I think, 4 months. And I can only imagine what that's like learning how to re-swing and everything. It's a terrible injury for a ball player. His career certainly hasn't turned out the way it was supposed to. But if
No.
you remember, he and Dylan Cease were what the Cubs gave up to get Jose Quintana from the White
Yep.
Sox.
Yep.
And the rest is history. Dylan Cease went on to be a real star pitcher. And Eloy Jimenez, plagued by injuries all the time. Brandon Hyde knows him from his days in development with the Cubs. He's excited about what he might be able to bring to the table. I think it's a short-lived experience, experiment, if it's a failure. But I don't see anything really wrong with trying.
We need, or the Orioles need, supplement and experience against left-handed pitching. Jimenez represents that. He is a veteran, so he's someone that, again, we're talking about playing time before. It might not be best to put him in the lineup every single day. He might be a 3 or 4 game a week option.
I see him as a right-handed DH only, pretty much.
Or he might get hot and be like closer to everyday status, maybe 5 or 6 lineups per week. But the difference between those two things is not crucial or important. We need him a little bit. And another aspect of that trade or that acquisition, we took on a little bit of money to pay him. It's not a lot, but when you add up everything that the Orioles did in terms of acquisition, we also acquired some payroll commitment. The Orioles added a great deal to their budget, especially for this season and next season.
That's the hidden story in this, is that David Rubenstein and his group,
they're buyers.
They're going to be players. You know, I don't think Michael Elias was careful to remind everybody that this is not New York, not Los Angeles, but we intend to, in the renovation of the stadium, we intend to monetize the stadium differently than in the past, meaning more skyboxes, more revenue, more signage,
more sponsors, so more revenue,
signage in the ballpark, no question about it. And they did take on, Eflin's going to make more money next year, I believe, than any Oriole has ever made. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, $18 million.
So I don't know if we're going to categorize the Orioles as small market, but anytime you look at a double-digit million increase in yearly budget, that's significant. And I think this is more than that. I think this is, I haven't calculated it all, but I think it's between 25 and 31 million additional dollars for this team. So we have entered the status of being buyers.
Eflin will definitely be back next year and make his 18 million. Eloy Jimenez, I think, is 13 this year, and he's got 2 option years. And I don't think the club, in any way, shape, or form. Look, if he comes in and hits 15 home runs the next 2 months, they might be happy to pay him 17 million next year or something like that. But I don't see that at this point.
Me neither.
And I don't see them necessarily signing Burns, but I think it's wide open that they could sign somebody to a 3 or 4 year contract in the Eflin territory, you know, like a 4-year, $70 million contract. I don't think we're going to be fishing in the $1 or $2 million range, Jenny. You know.
No, that's very reasonable. Burns is going to ask to be the highest paid pitcher in history, and no matter what, I just don't think that's in the Orioles' plans, personnel wise or budgetarily. I just
He seems
that's
like the
not in their
per
end. They can do more with that money somewhere else that isn't Corbin Burns.
he seems like I agree totally with what you said. He seems like a perfect fit for Steve Cohn, David Stearns, New York Mets, because David Stearns signed him in Milwaukee.
In Milwaukee, let
Yeah.
him max out. He's
Yeah.
he is one of the best pitchers
Yeah,
going right now, so
he's
he's
a
worth
great
it.
pitcher. He's a great
Yep.
pitcher. But what I loved about what Elias did, you know, and I know, with the certainty, the uncertainty about Burns being here next year, that the club was looking at Grayson Rodriguez and Dean Kramer. And all of a sudden, in 2 days, it went to Grayson Rodriguez, Zach Eflin, Dean Kramer, Trevor Rogers, and the hope that they'll go out and buy one more free agent for 3 years or something.
Yeah, Stan, that on itself is huge, but then also the people you just named will be the playoff pitchers instead of Cade Povich, Chase McDermott, and Suarez. Not a shot at those guys at all. But when we get into the postseason, it might be the only taste we get in the next decade. It probably won't, but we want experience. We want guys that have been there, that have faced the level of hitters that they're going to be seeing and have had success against them. So fortifying for the playoffs and taking the rookies out of those pressurized roles, huge thing, and spend money to do it.
And the fact that at their first trade deadline, they were willing to expand payroll, you can only imagine what they'll be like next year at the winter baseball meetings when Mike Elias says, hey, we can sign this guy. We thought we could get him at 4 for 75. He wants 4 for 90. And we can get the deal done. They're going to do it. They're jumping in. Okay.
By the way, talking about the White Sox, the Orioles traded a prospect that not a lot of our fans really knew about, Trey McGow, in one of those deals.
And he's kind of deal. Yeah.
He's kind of like Seth Johnson. The Orioles acquired him. They rehabbed him over, I think it was 2.5 seasons. Most people don't know this. He was having a good year. He was having a really good campaign after climbing the ladder affiliate-wise last year. He was doing well. High K per 9, low average against, extremely low whip. He's 26 and left-handed and as healthy as he's ever been in development. Don't be surprised if down the stretch on one of the worst
he's the opening day starter for the White Sox next year.
I'm not going to say a starter, but don't be surprised if he's getting holds in the last 2 or 3 weeks of this season, and probably has a chance to go to camp and compete for their 40-man spot next year.
All right, before we go, let's revisit the trade that we talked about that nobody really knows about. I wrote about it in my column last night on PressBoxOnline.com. The Orioles have a surplus of outfielders with Beavers, Fabian. They had Etzel, but they traded him. But Billy Cook was one of those sort of surplus outfielders they had.
Yep.
He's still a prospect. I mean, he's got a shot to make the show. But the Orioles got back. They traded with Ben Cherington and Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh apparently is short on position players that are really considered live prospects, but they have a lot of pitching prospects.
A ton.
We picked up Patrick Riley,
Yep.
6'3", like 205,
Yep.
big boy.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about him, because you saw him at the FCL, Florida Complex League.
Yep.
This guy not only replaces Baumeister, this is the beauty of Elias. I think he might be a touch better than Baumeister.
Well, I guess the thing that shapes people's concepts of how good you are when you don't watch the minor leagues is how much did you sign for? What college did you go to? Where were you drafted?
Yeah, what college did he go to?
Patrick Riley went to Vanderbilt. That's an excellent program. He didn't thrive.
Big time program. Yeah.
He wasn't their Friday night starter. But like you said, he's got the pitcher's body. He's got an astounding fastball with league-leading rise and inverted vertical break. I mean, he is a fastball guy. he can, if he only had that, he'd be fine. He's learning a curveball, he's learning a changeup, and he's got an outstanding slider. And he's got great endurance. He's got the long legs, the high waist, the kind of thing that the frame that Buck Showalter always liked. So he and Baumeister, they were in the same league. They had the same number of appearances this year, exact same. They hit 215 off of Baumeister. They hit 190 off of Patrick Riley. Baumeister had a 1.34 whip. Riley has a 1.16 whip. So he's done a little bit better. He wasn't the 42nd pick. He didn't go to Florida State, but he's more than adequate. He came from a true pitching factory in the Pirates, maybe the best in the league. The Orioles liked him so much, they're not sending him to high A. He's already at double A. He reported this afternoon he's with the Bowie Bay Sox. So Billy Cook is a very, very different type of profile, a good athlete. Really, in terms of baseball, he's good at every single skill, great at nothing, not that tall. He'll be 26 in January. He wasn't going to get an invite to compete for the 40-man for the Orioles under any circumstance ever, no matter what. So now he's got maybe Jack Sawinski in front of him, maybe Nick York and Nick Gonzalez when he gets to camp for second base. So he has he had no opportunity in Baltimore. He has a moderate to good one in Pittsburgh. These are sometimes the situations where athletes show I'm a lot better than anyone ever thought. No, he's not a 20th round pick. He's a 10th round pick. So again, the book is not closed on Billy Cook, but going to the Pirates is 25. We got a prospect back that Fangraphs rated as like 13th or 14th in the Pirates system. I have a feeling he's going to be 9th or 10th in the Orioles. Patrick Riley, maybe added to our 40-man next year. So really, really good trade from Elias, kind of late in the day.
We haven't even touched on these two topics. We'll save them for 1 week. The return of Jackson Holiday. We'll see how he does. He did well for a day, real well. And all these moves and circles around with different players getting injured. There's a guy named Kobe Mayo.
If we started now, I wouldn't stop for 2 hours. So good idea. Good suggestion.
We'll talk about it next week. All right. We thank our sponsors, the great Costas Inn. Again, if you live nearby in Middle River, Essex, Sparrows Point, Dundalk, Islandtown, just shoot over to the Costas Inn. 4 thumbs up on the Costas Inn. And again, not struggling by any means, but they're missing a lot of people who used to come from over south of the city.
It's not volume, it's rate. Kind of like what we talk about. Improve the rate. Go to the Costas Inn.
Go to the Costas Inn, especially if you live nearby, because you'll save the money on gas. Okay. AJ Michaels, heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and home performance, and also the new Atman's Deli in Harbor Point. Go there, watch an Orioles game at the bar. They're open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and dine in, grab takeout, or hang out at the bar for O's games. That's it for tonight. Thanks to Eric Garfield. I'll see you down the road. I'll be on Glenn Clark tomorrow, Friday morning, the 2nd, and be on with Luke and Ross on Monday afternoon. Bye for now.